name is Sheridan Ruth, and I am here to welcome you home. This is the Exposed Podcast. Where we reveal the body-based ways to ease anxiety, heal trauma, and create an empowered connection with love and money using nervous system regulation and a healthy dose of self-compassion. Welcome to today's podcast. Today we have an amazing guest because we are discussing how your energy mechanics impact your mind, emotions, and boundaries. We're going to be talking with Jenn Greiner of Divine Vitality. She's a vitality coach, licensed counselor, and art therapist, and she has 10 years of experience in mental health. She utilizes human design to help individuals break patterns, to decondition and stand in their power for improved communication and relationships. This podcast is perfect for you if you're like, what is human design? But you want to live a more unapologetic life and manage your energy in more efficient ways. Or if you're like, I know what human design is, let's talk about it. You're also going to get a lot out of the podcast. Now, before we get into it, if you, my dear listener, are expanding into the version of yourself that can set unapologetic boundaries and use moments of tension in your life and relationships to improve how you give and receive love, or how you find your most authentic expression and feel really confident and grounded in your decisions, I would love to invite you to come on to www.sheridanruth.com/expansion, where you can book your free 30-minute expansion call. On this call, you will receive free coaching and support around your unique and individual situation, and we will explore whether or not working through my signature ease framework is the best fit for your time, your energy, and your money at this time in your life. Go ahead and use the link in the show notes to book your call. Press pause, go ahead, do it ASAP, and then press play so that we can dive right into the episode. Hi, Jenn. I'm feeling a little bit of like flutters and butterflies a little bit in my chest because I'm really excited about our phone call today. Ever since you and I did our first chat, so beautiful listeners, Jenn and I met on Instagram. We were talking about boundaries. You guys know I have strong opinions on boundaries. And so when I saw Jenn kind of saying something, I was like, yeah, like that's the whole point. And so we went and we spoke about boundaries on her Instagram. You guys can go check it out later. I'll put the links in the show notes. And Jenn has this really wonderful way of like understanding energy and how mismanagement of energy or proper management of energy, like how can we manage our energy? Like what does that actually mean? And why is your energy unique to my energy versus to Jessica's down the road's energy versus you, dear listener, who are listening, your energy? So Jenn, welcome. Thank you for being on Exposed.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited for this chat. I just loved our previous chat all about boundaries and how human design kind of like fell into it. And yeah, boundaries, there's just so much to it. We think about them so simply, but I know we had the chat of like, but what are they? And then when we tie in the energy management into it, it's just takes it to a whole nother level. So I'm so excited.
Yeah. So you said a word just then, human design. And now some of you wonderful, beautiful people listening are coming in. You're like, I know what human design is. I am a 2, 4, 3, whatever. So I only know my own. And so that's not true. I know many, but you're coming, you're like, yeah, I'm looking at the gene keys. I got it done. And some of you are like, what is that word? So Jenn, what is that word? And like, why do I need to care about it?
Yes. So human design has been becoming more popular over the past few years. Kind of everybody fell down the beautiful rabbit hole of it during COVID, but it's been around since the late 80s, grew popularity in the 90s, and really it is the blueprint of how our energy works within us on a conscious and unconscious level. But I also find that human design, well, sometimes I simply describe it as astrology on crack, because it really is so much more than astrology. So if anyone listening is interested in astrology, like, you have to check out human design, because there's an aspect of astrology in human design, but it also contains the chakra system, Kabbalah, the I Ching, and quantum physics. So it really has all of these parts together that help us see who we are. I also see it as the best personality assessment out there. You know, the Myers-Briggs has gained a lot of popularity recently, and honestly, that has nothing on human design. So if you're into the Myers-Briggs, if you know your 4 letters, you're going to feel so seen and given permission to be you through human design.
Yeah, because the thing with Myers-Briggs and also the Enneagram, I personally feel like that is a map to our wounding. I'm going to be really brutal about it. I feel like it's a map to our wounding. And yes, it tells us how we can grow, but it doesn't necessarily tell us what our nervous system, because when we look at the chakras and when we look at the even human design, it corresponds to the endocrine system, which manages your hormones, so which then affect your nervous system. So it doesn't necessarily tell us, like, how do we manage our body? What is happening in our body? We need to care about what's happening in our body, because our body is our compass for the rest of our life, and the way that we experience life is through our body. So if our body, if we can't connect with it, which we do not when we use personality tests or even astrology, it can be quite difficult. It doesn't connect you back to your body. Whereas human design is giving us a map of, like, what's actually happening and how is energy running through your body. And I think that's why I was drawn to it when I started working with it. Like, that's a different podcast, because everything changed. Like, everything changed. It was the biggest, oh my God, Sheridan, you have actually not made any mistakes. And you know what you're doing, and all is beautiful. And so, yeah, so how, like, we spoke a little bit about how human design essentially is like your energy mechanics and how that impacts your minds and emotions. Can you give us an example or understanding?
Yes. So what you just said makes me go to, you know, the basics of human design. If you're just starting out, there's so much in there. It can be overwhelming, because human design literally sheds light on everything. It does shed light on the wounding, on the shadow, on your digestion, on your nervous system, on your different body functions. Like, it's everything. So really looking at the energy type that you are, because there's so much in there. Then each type has a strategy. So you really want to look at that, because that kind of guides your body. But even more so, I love talking about the authority. And that's how we make decisions, because all of the authorities come from the body. And if you're letting your mind hijack your body, which we're essentially all taught to do throughout our life, then you're hijacking yourself. So it's really nice to know and understand your authority, because it almost brings you back to your body. And it's really nice. I encourage all of my clients to cultivate awareness in that center that is their authority, because you really have to know and trust it to really be guided through life, through managing your energy, through utilizing your energy mechanics that are your gifts and magic that you're here to use, and likely have been conditioned. But through listening to your body, checking in, and following your authority, you're going to naturally start to decondition and manage your energy. It just kind of all falls into place.
Yeah. And some people get so like, oh, how do I, like, figure this out? And, like, how do I decondition? And I'm like, you just follow your authority. Like, you just make an aligned decision. And how do you do that? Through awareness, through your body. I think that's why I get excited about being a somatic practitioner, because I'm like, no, it's all fixed. Like, if there's anything that you take away from this, it's come back to your body, follow your authority and life will smile upon you. That being said, there are so many nuances that are really fun and self no, what is the word that I'm trying to say? Like what you said before, that they're really fun to get into because they're very validating, like self-validating. When somebody can look at your chart and be like, hey, you're the type of person who like just doesn't finish books and you like don't finish you really struggle to finish things. And be like, yeah, you're supposed to be like that. What a beautiful reflection to have.
Yeah, and for me, people always ask about kind of the first realization that I had, and I imagine you can relate to this as a fellow projector. But one of the first pieces of validation that I received in finding out that I was a projector was that I don't have the energy to do it all. And I was like, oh, you mean I can stop trying to do everything and burning out to like beyond the extent that I had ever experienced burnout? It was just like, oh, I can take a step back and I'm not meant to do all the things, especially when you're a business owner. You feel like you have to do it all yourself. So, really, just knowing that I don't have the energy for that and that is okay. And I'm meant to do other things so that I have energy was just like absolutely mind blowing for me.
Yeah. No wonder we're talking about boundaries for two projectors. Like,
Yes. And emotional projectors too.
yeah, so funny. Yeah, it's so true. Okay, so words. These are big words. How do our dear listeners know what their strategy, energy, and authority, energy type and authority are? And like, can you explain a little bit? Where do they find that? How do they know? What does that mean once they know what their word is?
Yes. So you can grab your human design chart online for free. There's different websites. You can just Google it. You'll find one. There's Genetic Matrix, Jovian Archive. I love using myhumandesign.com. I think she just gives a lot of basic info. It's also a pretty chart to look at. So that's what I like to use. And you need your exact time of birth. So that's where a lot of people get hung up. So it's not on a lot of birth certificates. So if you have to, ask your mom, there's some more intuitive, like woo ways to figure out your exact time if you can't. But that is the one piece that you do need. Assuming that you also know where you were born and, of course, your birth date. So you just put that information in. The program calculates it all and pops up with your body graph, weird shapes, colors that you see. That means everything to me, but it does not have to mean anything to you. Don't even look at it. It's cool, but that's it. So, in all of the words that are in there, it will say energy type, it will say strategy, it will say authority. Those are the biggest ones to look at and know. And from there, starting with your type, I love Google. Google is free. There's a lot of information on there now. So I usually just type the word, add in human design, and lots of stuff will pop up. Or if you know someone or follow someone on Instagram, there's so much information out there that people are sharing. So find someone that you like, follow them, follow me, Sheridan, if you're talking about it. There's just so much information out there to begin learning about it.
Yeah, yeah, that's perfect. And you guys follow Jen, ask her about it, send her a DM, be like, hey, what does this mean? Ask me. Jen probably does a better way of explaining it, but I use it and I do nerd out on it a lot because it's super fun. So once we know that, how do we manage our energy depending on like where your foundation is? I'm like, okay, I'm looking at my chart, I'm a projector, or I'm a generator or whatever. Like, what do I need to know about energy?
So yeah, it really comes into the type. And I think when you look into your type, you'll start to see kind of how energy comes into it. So we kind of lump generators and manifesting generators together because they're both sacral beings. So what that means is they have a defined sacral and a fixed, reliable way of managing their energy. They know when enough is enough. They can listen to their gut. They get a gut hit of an or to help guide them to what is a good use of their energy. That may also be their authority. Half of generators and many gens have a sacral authority, so you're always going to tune into that gut. So if you find that your type is a generator or manifesting generator, you want to listen to your gut all the time, ask it yes no questions, and really utilize it to guide you through your energy. To kind of step away from the types for 1 minute, I love talking about the heart and ego center because that's where boundaries are. And if you have a defined ego, so it's the little triangle that's kind of like shoved in the body of the chart. If you see it, if it's colored in, you can ask yourself, is this worth it? Is this thing worth my energy?
That's so funny that I have a defined heart or ego, and I ask myself that. And I've actually said to my friends, like talking about things, I'll like, yeah, like I ask myself, like, is it worth it? Like, I don't know, like, is this worth it? And I actually had a friend say to me like 8 years ago, Sheridan, like, not everything is about figuring out if it's worth it for you. And I was like really upset. I was like, oh, well, it kind of is for me, but like, like I felt shamed. And so you saying that now, I'm like, oh no, but it is.
It is. And I have a defined heart too. And I too found myself like, oh, asking this. And really, for Sheridan and I both, it's not our authority. We are emotional authorities, but we have this extra power to help us. So we still need to feel into it. But knowing if it's worth it, we can feel into that too. So I always check with my clients because sometimes it just comes out of my mouth to say it, but I'm like, oh, if you have an undefined heart, so if it's white, this question likely will not resonate with you because you don't have a reliable way of knowing if it's worth it or not. So if you're asking yourself that question and you're finding that you're making mistakes or you're still burning out, that's because it's not a question for you. Coming back to your authority will help you know what question really is for you.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I love that. And I want to caveat and say, beautiful listener, if you're one of the people that I work with that it has really big decisions that weigh on your heart, and you're like, I do not know how to make this decision. It's okay if you don't ask like what your gut wants you to know or what your heart wants you to know or what your emotions are saying about that decision for some of the big stuff. Because when we can almost think of it, I think, as like going with the energy, almost like stagnant energy in the system, trauma, stress, outdated beliefs. In human design, you call this conditioning. When we're adopting things that aren't empowering for us, maybe from our past or society as a whole, when we make big decisions, sometimes it can be really hard to listen to our authority until we've done some of that cleansing, processing, awareness, somatic, even mindset based work. So I always I just want to caveat that to say, like, I'm not saying that if you ask yourself, is it worth it to be in this romantic relationship? And your answer is like, no, like, get a little bit curious because it might be a real no, but it also could just be like your avoidant attachment coming out. We don't know. I would just get really curious about that. And, or if you ask your gut, is this a good idea? And it says yes, well, okay, if it's a really big decision, like, still let's get really curious about and like practice using your authority for smaller things first.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the other piece that I always like to mention, people always ask, when you're reading through the chart properties, when you get your human design, there's something in there called definition. And this is how many voices you have. So kind of going on because your energy works in different ways. So if you have a single definition, great, wonderful, you can fast forward this. because you have an easy flow to your energy. You have one voice, you're utilizing your authority. Like it, it works for you. But Sheridan and I both have a split definition. There's triple definition and quadruple definition. So for us, we have two voices. We have our authority, but then we have this detached energy, this other kind of subset of a flow of energy, and they don't like communicate with each other. So we have these two voices that are almost playing like angel and devil within us that we're like, but which one do I listen to? So that's why it's so important to know your authority so that you can listen to the one that really matters.
Funny, like you guys can't see this, but if you would, I'm just laughing really hard because I'm like, well, no wonder she ended up in anxiety coaching. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
just described my life. Yes, this is correct.
Yeah. And I mean, just seeing your chart now. Oh, actually, you have a triple split,
I
don't
have a
you?
triple split, yeah. And so
Dude.
I can't like with running a business, it's actually been really difficult because I have so many different ideas, and like unless I'm using somebody else's nervous system, I don't get clarity a lot of the time. Like I I'll come with all of these ideas and all of these thoughts, and I literally would just be like, "Hey, can you just like sit with me while I make this? I don't need you to do anything. I just want to like sit next to you and maybe say a few things out loud, and then I will figure out what I want."
Yes, and this is a great point because I think there's kind of something that goes along with human design that I don't know that I've ever heard talk about. Is that okay? I have this information. I like should be able to do it on my own. And it's no, because you have this separation. So this is just another great reason of why we all need support. Like I have a business coach because I too am like, I don't know what I'm doing in business. I have my emotions that are in it. But then I have the other subset of my definition with an undefined throat. And like I have challenges. But when I'm with my business coach and I see this with my clients when they're with me, that we bridge those gaps. And that's all about compatibility that I love looking into how energy is exchanged between two charts, how the energy works together so that you can manage it, have healthy boundaries. But I too sometimes just need someone else's energy to either get me going or to help me kind of like settle in, all the different ways that we can really utilize someone else's energy regardless of it's engaged or not, to help us reach our goals.
Yeah, totally. This like support is so essential. What about when it's not related to things about like business? What about when like how do the different ways that each individual, depending on their chart, relate to their thoughts or their emotions? Like how would you be able to like can you look at a chart and be like, this person relates to their emotions like this person relates to their thoughts like this? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I think if we kind of break that down into the different centers, so we can talk when we talk about emotions, we talk about the solar plexus. So that's the triangle on the right side in the body. When that's defined, you colored in, you have a fixed emotional wave. So Sheridan and I both actually ride the same tribal wave. So our emotions go kind of in your natural wave. They have their ups, their downs, it kind of builds and until what's called ratchets that it just kind of like plummets back down. For me, that's always looks kind of like temper tantrums and outbursts because I just kind of like it builds up and I just lose it. And I have to lose it. I have to get the emotions out. So I might cry, I might scream, usually this is done alone by myself, so that I can get that out and then start my wave back over. And it's this trust in the emotions. So we can also look at a deeper level within the emotions based on the gates, the numbers in that center that are defined that have a circle around them, because there is an aspect to the solar plexus where each of the gates have fears. When we're in our lower vibration, when we're kind of into the shadow, we sink into those fears. And then when I do readings and work with clients, there's even something more specific where I can see where clients might be actually fixed in one of those vibrations that adds an extra challenge to it to either just be aware of or to focus extra work, especially if it's unconscious. So there's a lot that goes
What
into
does
it. So
mine say?
I would have to look your chart up in a different,
Oh,
my
okay.
mine doesn't have it, genetic matrix does, but we certainly can, and you can share with your listeners in another way.
Oh my God, how curious. We'll do that later. Um, it's really interesting because I feel like that I'm almost glad that I didn't know that for a little while because it led me to the tools that I am very happy to now have and teach of the emotional alchemy. But it is a very helpful thing to know that emotions are just going to come and they're just like going to go. Like I know, for example, and you can probably see when you look at my chart, like I experience a lot of loneliness, like really lonely. And I'm just like, yeah, that's in me. It's just, it's an energy. I have the energy of loneliness in me. And it's not that I'm doing anything wrong. It's that I have an energy of loneliness in my system and I'm okay.
And that's where we can give ourselves permission that you're not trying to change that, that is something. And how can you, I actually saw this in a projectors group posted, and it was like mind blown that are we mistaking loneliness for peace? And when I sat
Oh,
with that, right? Like, yeah, I'm lonely, but wait, I'm actually really peaceful. And when I can shift that energy to reframe it into peace, like I'm living the life. And there's where our successes as a projector too. We can find success in that.
how curious. Okay. I'm going to ask myself that question sometimes. Yeah, that's nice. My whole body, like, I'm like, oh, that's nice. Yeah.
Right. And that, we've been talking about the body feels like it when you get into your body in that way and really like notice how it feels, the mind just kind of like turns off. And
Yeah.
it's really nice.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, it is. Beautiful. Okay, so what about with somebody who does not have this defined?
Yes. So there's two options. If you have the solar plexus white, it's either completely open, meaning there is no color whatsoever in there. There are no gates that are active or on. No, none of the numbers are colored. So in that case, it's completely open. So you are undefined, but there's this other dimension, and this extra dimension causes that center to more act like a mirror. So for me as a defined emotional, when I'm with someone who has a completely open solar plexus, they mirror my emotions. And it's just kind of like, oh, here's my emotion. They don't attach to it. They can, just give it back to me or let it flow through them. So it's kind of this nice emotional exchange. And not to say that anyone with an undefined solar plexus doesn't have emotions, because we're sentient beings. We all feel, but it just works in a different way. So for someone with an undefined solar plexus that isn't completely open, there's a lot we usually work on here. Because there can be some things to decondition. There's also the fact that undefined centers amplify the emotions and energy of a defined solar plexus. So I'll use myself as an example. I was in a relationship with someone with an undefined solar plexus, and boy, it felt like a roller coaster because I had
Mm.
my own wave, but when I was with them, it really escalated and they didn't know what to do with that energy because it was mine. And they
Mm.
were mistaking my emotions for theirs. They had trauma and it caused them to attach to those emotions, and it would just spiral. So there was a lot that we had to work on together, how to separate, how to discern what's mine, what's yours, and kind of separate from that. So sometimes undefined solar plexus can be kind of like a roller coaster because you don't know what to expect. Your emotions kind of come and go. But for anyone, how we can work to not attach to our emotions, we feel them, they are a part of us, but they can move through us, then we can all get through the emotional waves.
Yeah. When you're speaking, I almost feel like for people who don't have an emotional wave, it's even possibly like more important to do emotional processing work because you're holding so much that like isn't yours. And so you have to learn to be like, okay, like what actually is mine and how can I process what isn't? And then how can I process also like what, yeah, it's a lot. That's a lot. Yeah.
It is a lot. And a lot of times it just makes me sad because we're not taught to manage our emotions. So, especially the older generations don't know what to do with it. So, they shove it down rather than looking at it. And since, anyone with an undefined solar plexus um, can hold on to that, they don't have that wave, they don't have a fixed reliable way to move that energy, so it can get so stuck, it can get so, I'll use the word ugly here in a way because it's
Mm.
so complex and shadowed, and a lot of people don't seek out the support, and it's a lot to be ready to dive into your emotions, invest in yourself, and do this work that's really difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what about the other centers? Because there's so much.
Yes. So is there a specific one? I know we talked about the mind before, but the spleen always stands out. The root I talk a lot about.
I'm really curious, actually. I have a client at the moment. I love you. I hope you don't mind me using your experience. I'm sure that you won't. You'll be happy. I have a client at the moment who has she has a really active root center. So she has a lot of definition in her root center. And so she always talks about like fit. And I have my kind of personal experience with this, but she always like, she's like, I feel just like this pressure. Like I just have this pressure. And it leads to these thoughts, shoulds, have tos, not going to have enough time, like all of this stuff, all of this pressure. And so like what can you say about how the energy of the root center affects us?
So she has a defined, or they have a defined root.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So typically I see that with undefined. So people
Mm.
with an undefined root don't have a fixed, reliable way to manage pressure. And when there's external pressure, they feel that it's their own and they put these like really unmanageable expectations on themselves. A good friend of mine has a completely open root. And after hearing her talk for a while about all the pressure, oh my gosh, I just feel like I have to do it all. And it would kind of like cripple her in a way. I was like, oh, let's check in on this center. What's the conditioning here? How can you come back to your authority? Literally, always come back to your authority because that's going to override and help you navigate anything. So it just took some reframing, a little bit of deconditioning and some reframing to look at pressure a different way, to trust herself, to access her authority. And she's been doing a great job working on this for a while.
Mm.
So I talk a lot about deconditioning with the undefined centers, but what I've come to conclude is that that's a lot easier. The energy, we can see what's not ours. It doesn't work in a fixed, reliable way. We can look at the gates there and kind of pick it apart pretty easily. It's the defined centers when they get conditioned, because the conditioning works its way into the fixed, reliable way of the energy in that center, that it can be so hard to discern and pick it apart. So for your client, it would really be looking at the gates, which, I mean, there's so much there. So she is, or they have so much innate wisdom, but then I would even more specifically, this is where Gene Keys comes in because it gives us the language and the spectrum of energy already to see where they're in the shadow. How can they shift that energy to try to work more in the gift? And is it simply that? Sometimes it's even more so just being mindful that the mind isn't hijacking, trusting I handle pressure. I'm an adrenaline junkie. I need this pressure. It's pressurized from the root. How can I get it up out of the crown, out of me? I know for me personally, I have been making sure to work out every single day. I have a defined root. I have a completely open crown, and I have to move that energy out because otherwise it sits within my body and I turn bitter. I fall into my not self theme, and bitterness can just consume me.
Yeah, that is so interesting. Love that. So I have defined crown and ajna, and it's like mental activity is like a lot of it, but you have it open. What is the crown and ajna and how do they affect our thoughts?
Yeah. So the crown is that very top triangle for anybody who's looking or is new. So that's also a pressure center because the energy is coming from source, coming from above you and pressurizing down into your body. For me, it can be difficult because I don't have any definition through my top three centers. They're all undefined. So the energy can just kind of like go in and sometimes like swirl in the mind. The ajna, that second center, so the crown is all about inspiration too. So Sheridan, with your defined crown, you likely know where you get inspiration. You can sit down, you can access that inspiration. Mine is like, it could come, it could not come. Sometimes I need to be
How
with other people.
frustrating.
You know, when we're in this entrepreneurial like creator mode, I've just had to conclude like I'm not a creator. I just can't do it because it is frustrating. And if I force it, I turn bitter.
Yeah.
So
I'll give you
I
some of mine because I have so many, and I'm like, Sheridan, stop, don't do all of it. I just like give it to you. Yeah.
well, it was so funny. I was with a client the other day and I had to pause and she was like, "What?" And I was like, "You have a defined crown and ajna. I'm not used to this and I'm getting a lot of inspirations right now. So I'm just like taking my own notes over here, but I'm still focusing on you."
Dear listener, before we wrap the end of this episode up, I want you to know that I see you. I know that you're ready to bounce back from difficulties in your life quickly and with more ease by having the tools to regulate your nervous system and find inner peace instead of inner conflict. I know you're ready to embrace life's challenges and stresses and feel confident to take on whatever comes your way, including anxiety or anger, to move through them without manipulating them, without having to spend eternity in uncertainty, sticky emotions, and physical discomfort. You are ready to celebrate the growth of yourself, your relationship, your finances, without experiencing shame or guilt when you're doing it quicker than those around you. Which is why I'm extending an invitation to you to book an expansion call where we will dive even deeper on exactly what you need in your personal situation to make this a reality, to go from overwhelmed managing big emotions and perhaps going into anxiety or depression to overflowing abundance, ease, and certainty. You'll get free support around your unique situation, and we will also discuss whether or not working through my ease framework in a one-on-one capacity is the best fit for you right now on your journey of becoming more resilient and regulated. Use the link in the show notes to lock in your call ASAP. Yeah. So it's kind of like, let's pedal back. It's like when you have it defined, it can be a lot of activity, a lot of inspiration consistently. Have I
More so
misunderstood?
consistently. Again, that defined center works in a fixed, reliable way. So you know where your inspiration comes. You can put yourself in a place that you know inspiration is there, or maybe it's a time of day. You know how to access that for yourself. And then
Yeah.
with undefined, you're not, it's not consistent, but with a completely open, a lot of times I mirror that inspiration or also the environment. So like I love being in nature. When I'm calm and grounded in nature, I can get inspired. So that's kind of like the only reliability that I
Yeah.
kind of have.
Yeah. How interesting. Yeah. What about questions? So a lot of my clients come and we work a lot on answering endless questions or actually learning not to answer endless questions. How does that? I see you smiling. Go ahead, tell me your thoughts.
I just love that you asked this question so much because this is something that, on a personal level, I am always working on. So, with our undefined centers, there comes a question with them. So, with the undefined mind, undefined ajna, This center is all about processing and filtering. It really doesn't have a mind of its own. It kind of takes the inspiration, processes them, and then tries to push that down to the throat to express it and manifest it and get it out in that way. So with an undefined mind, it's just all kind of like swirling in there because it has nowhere to go. But the undefined mind also asks the question of, am I trying to answer everybody's question? Whether they've asked me or not, I'm just constantly like, well, what about this? And what about that? And saying this, I'm not even a one line. So if I was a one line, needing the foundation, needing to know why, like I feel like society could not handle me because I would just always be asking questions. I would probably be in a very different line of work. Um, so when we have the crown, sorry, the crown answers that. And then the mind also wants to try to convince everyone that we know it. So with both of those undefined, it's like I'm trying to answer all these questions. And then I'm also trying to, like, in a way, convince you that like, yes, this is it. I know what I'm talking about. Or like, these are the questions that do need to be answered. So I've really been in check with myself of like, okay, this is not worth my energy. I need to disregard all these questions because they really don't matter.
Oh, can we put that on a bumper sticker and just like put that on oh, just yes. And I say this and I mean this for everyone with that specific like practice of like, where are you putting your energy into questions that don't matter? I
And
do it.
so much. Oh, right. And even with your definition, if you do it and that becomes your fixed, reliable way of doing things, in a way, I mean, we do self condition too.
Yeah.
So if we can really all cultivate that awareness of just checking in and like the sacral beings, just ask yourself yes or no. Do I need an answer to this question? If the hit is no, let that go.
Yeah. Yeah. So amazing. So
Mhm.
amazing. Is that, see, we spoke a little bit about internal boundaries. And I kind of feel like that's an internal boundary, like that I have had to have with myself, because I definitely have done that kind of self-conditioning of like, oh, like just ask better questions, just like figure things out so that you can avoid some disaster. And I've had to put this internal boundary of myself of being like, actually, no, we're not answering that question right now. Actually, no, it's okay. I don't need to know that. It's safe not to have the answer. It's safe not to have the answer. It's safe not to have the answer.
Oh, I love using that mantra with this because, coming back to what we were talking about before with the nervous system and even the shadow work that I do with clients too, there is such an underlying piece of feeling unsafe. So when we can say that to ourselves and remind ourselves that we are safe, it really just brings us back into our body, connects us with ourselves so that we can really access the energy and the gifts that we do have.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels like a deep breath.
It really is. It's just this like grounded connectedness. Like I feel more in my body right now than I have all day. So it really just is like, yes, I'm safe. I'm in control. Those things don't matter because I'm coming home to myself where it does matter.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. What are I want to wrap this up with kind of your words of wisdom, what you think is the most important thing for somebody to keep in mind or somebody to know as they navigate understanding their energy mechanics and their boundaries.
Yeah. So to kind of come back to what we started talking about at the beginning about the types and boundaries. So for generators and manifesting generators, it really needs to light you up. If it doesn't light you up, you're going to burn out. You have all
Mm,
of this energy, and I see them putting energy everywhere because they can, but it
mm,
results in falling into the not self theme of frustration and not, feeling satisfied, which is their self theme. So it's really all about lighting you up. For the manifestors, it's about initiating, starting something new. And sometimes I see manifestors, because they're a much rarer type, finding peace. A society talks about anger, they're not self-themed so much, so it's almost like society kind of supports manifestors in guiding their energy. They're not sacral, but manifestors seem to do a better job cultivating their own boundaries, knowing they don't have the energy for it, but if it lights them up to start something or just go off and initiate doing something on their own, they're going to do it anyway. So they almost seem to have more innate boundaries within them. That's probably not true across the board, but that's what I tend to see with energy management for manifestors. And then, of course, coming back to their authority. And for projectors, it's really about managing our energy. We don't have that energy. So it's about the boundary of, are we taking time to ourselves? Like, we really need to refuel and recharge. And if we're not resting, playing, having fun, finding delight, and really being in our unique projector essence that is not yet understood by society, then we're going to burn out, and we're not having that boundary that we ourselves so need. With projectors, it's also the strategy of waiting for the invitation. So when we're pushing, when we're inviting in those places where they don't want the invitation, it hasn't been given, those people aren't recognizing us, it is not only an energy leak, it's an energy suck. And it can really, really hurt. It can really put us in a bitter place that's not great. And then for reflectors, the last energy type, that's only 1% to 2% of the world. But for reflectors, because their chart is completely open, completely undefined, no centers defined, they are really susceptible to their environment. So if they're putting themselves in an environment that doesn't feel good, that's not conducive to them, that is too high energy for a long period of time, they can't really use their boundaries. So for reflectors, it really comes back to self boundaries, because nobody else knows what they're experiencing. So it's really the boundaries about stepping back, defining yourself when you have no definition, making sure that you're not taking on the energy, but also really putting yourself in a good place, in a conducive environment.
Yeah. So it's almost like what I hear is it's just being really unapologetic about what's priority to you. So like the generators, the manifesting generators, being like unapologetic about, this lights me up, I'm going to pursue it. Like, that doesn't light me up, sorry, it's a no. Like being strong and like, no, that's a no. And then the manifestors unapologetically pursuing peace.
Yes.
I know some manifestors and they don't really do a lot. They're very peaceful. And I'm like, yeah, good on you. They're not like this big leader that I almost think like manifestors, some people think manifestors have to be. It's like, no, they're just hanging out at home, enjoying a peaceful life. And like, that's really good for them. And then with projectors, like unapologetically being like, I always think of it's like, I'm actually got my piece of wisdom as a projector that I'm going to share is like unapologetically not giving advice, because people will ask you for advice, but unless they have really recognized you and they have really invited you to give advice and you will feel it, they're not going to take your advice, and you're going to be annoyed about it because you're going to be like, that was a gem of wisdom and now you didn't take it and I don't know what's happened to your life. And so like unapologetically just like saying no when people ask you for advice.
Yes. It's
Yeah.
one of the toughest boundaries I've had to learn, but it is one of the boundaries that always makes me feel so much better.
Yeah, I agree. Because then you free up so much more energy to do so many more things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so needed.
Yeah. And reflectors like unapologetically prioritizing their environment and being like, no, this environment isn't supportive to me. This will be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love
And those
that.
are great boundaries that make a huge difference. Like, if you can implement just these little things. And again, I didn't say this at the beginning, but human design is an experiment. It is not set in stone. There are many different ways to go about things. So if this doesn't resonate, that's totally fine. And you may be in a place in your life right now where it's not meant to resonate, and that's okay. So just
Yeah.
trying it out, seeing what works, seeing what feels good, what puts you into that self theme of satisfaction, peace, success, or surprise.
Yeah. Beautiful. Lovely. So what next step should our beautiful listener do? Where do they need to find you? Where do they need to go? Tell us, what's next?
Yes. So next, follow me on Instagram. I would love for you to follow along with my posts. DM me. I love questions. I'm a projector. I love invitations. So come give me all the invitations. I love building relationships. So my Instagram handle is the Vital Jenn. So follow and connect there through my link in that bio. You can get onto my website. I also do mini human design readings. So if you've looked at yours, if you want to know more, the mini reading is a half an hour, and it's a great way just to understand the centers, understand your type. We kind of talk about all the surface pieces that make a huge impact, and it's not overwhelming. I do the full 90-minute reading, but that is in depth. We cover everything in that, which, if you're familiar with human design, that's a great option as well. And that's why I include it in my 3-month container when I work with people, because it's really helpful to get down to the nitty gritty when we're ready to do the alignment work.
Yeah, amazing. Having a reading done by somebody who can explain things to you and you don't have to go diving into the internet for hours on end and like figuring out one thing says this, but this other thing, like so helpful. So yeah, everyone go and get that one. How beautiful. Thank you, Jen, for joining us. And I will make sure all of those links are down below for everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. A big and special thanks to Upturned for composing this magical piece of music and to GS Studios for mixing it. To find Upturned's other tracks or ask for your own special custom piece of music, go say hello using their contact details in the show notes.